All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the fifth installment in our webinar series, the Indian Energy Minerals Forum. Today's topic is successful tribal energy projects. This is co-hosted with Sagebrush Hill Group, LLC. This is Derek Watchman and Steve Gray, who will be our moderators. And we have our USCA's acting executive director, Mrs. Sheila Hollis, with us today. Give me one moment as I pull up a presentation here, just a short one. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Littlefield. I am a program coordinator with the USCA Consensus Program. Just a little note about us. We're formally named Building Consensus on Carbon Capture, Utilization, and Storage. We call this Consensus for short. This is a cooperative agreement with the Department of Energy, Fossil Energy, and Carbon Management. The program educates the public, policymakers, industry, and stakeholders on CCUS and carbon management technologies by hosting webinars such as these. We also have a series of monthly educational briefings, conference workshops, we have technical reports, and every month we have a news clips of CCUS and carbon management related updates. If you would like to join our mailing list, if you have not done so already, feel free to send an email to the address at the bottom of your screen, and we'll add you as a subscriber. At the end of the session, we'll have a question and answer portion. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to submit a question, and we'll address as many as we can. This webinar will also be recorded and posted on our event page, along with the presentation slides, but we do appreciate you taking the time to join us live. With that, I'll pass it on to our acting executive director, Mrs. Sheila Hollis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today to tell you just momentarily what USCA is all about. It's been a privilege to be asked to lead it for about a year now as a result of the passing of our former executive director, who was in that capacity for 3 decades, Barry Worthington. But with respect to what USCA is and does, we really have a tremendous staff of about 30 people, multilingual, multi-capability in all things energy. We eat, sleep, and drink energy, and we really have 2 major focuses. First is working internationally. We've worked in 104 countries throughout the world, and we do that with the U.S. Agency for International Development, the State Department, and the Energy Department, all hand in hand with those entities. And our goal is to make the world a better place, develop more energy access, get it to people around the world who need it. And in addition, our parallel universe is to be a convener on thinkers and doers and developers and experts from throughout the USA too and throughout the world. And so we're here to convene and inform. And this is an example of one of our finest efforts, one with which we are very, very dedicated and very, very proud. And the people you will have on this outstanding panel today will really take you into the real deep think on what to do in the West, particularly with respect to Native American Indian energy mineral related issues. And so with that, I now turn it back to you, Michelle, and thank you for giving me a moment to talk a little bit about USCA. I could go on for hours extolling its many virtues, but I'll hand it back to you.
All right, Sheila, thank you very much. I'll actually pass it over to Derek Watchman and Steve Gray of Sagebrush Hill Group.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Sheila, for that great introduction. I am Derek Watchman, and I and Steve Gray, we are with Sagebrush Hill Group, LLC, a Navajo member professional service company. And we've been, Steve and I have been in the energy business for many years, of course, within other industries. And so we're delighted to be here today to host and continue with our Indian Minerals Energy Forum. This is our webinar number 5. And so what we've been tasked to do with the United States Energy Association and the Department of Energy's Fossil Energy is to discuss and bring forth a conversation regarding tribal energy development, particularly carbon-based energy development in Indian country. And so over the last year, we've come to learn that if you look at Indian country, for example, there's quite a number of resources that are within Indian lands, Indian confines. You see oil, gas, coal on the carbon side, and then of course with the new carbon reduction and renewable energy, there's a lot of other opportunities, renewable opportunities on reservations. And so, but today our focus, I've got an echo here now. But today our focus is successful energy projects, and we look high and low for that, to be quite honest. And so, but the two projects that Steve is going to introduce and talk about, we think are very near and dear and very in close proximity to Indian country. For those of you that don't know, there's over 574 federally recognized tribes here in the United States, including Alaska, and about 300 live on reservations. And so, if you look at the reservation footprint, very significant and very vast. And so, tribal government, are just like any other governments, your federal, state, local government. Tribes, at least in my opinion, are also like corporations. Tribes have the responsibility of providing the governmental services, health, education, and welfare, but tribal governments are also involved with energy development. And basically, the primary reason for energy development is to provide revenue so that, like our elders, our children, have services, including, education and fire protection. And so a lot of times when you mention Indian country, quickly what comes to mind is gaming. And, gaming has been very good for Indian country, but gaming has only helped, a few tribes around the country, particularly those tribes that are close to highly populated areas. And so, but the rest of Indian country, has had to look at other sources of economic opportunities. And so I myself am Navajo, and my joke is I'm a Navajo from Navajo, and I grew up in a town called Navajo, New Mexico. And so, I've come to learn and understand that on Navajo, our tribe has been heavily dependent on coal and oil and gas, but now we obviously have a new mandate. There's other tribes that are dependent on coal and oil and gas. And so today, we want to bring conversation to, what are successful projects in Indian country. We hope to continue with this series to help guide and provide conversation to our tribal partners, as to what are some possibilities, going forward. Diversification is a big issue. And so again, I want to welcome and thank you to express my thanks to the Department of Energy and USCA. And so I'm going to turn the time over to my partner, Steve Gray, and we're going to get into our program today. So I'd like to introduce Steve Gray. And so Steve, the floor is yours. And thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Derek. Also, we want to, again, just thank the USCA, as well as the Department of Energy, including Department of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, for their continuing support for us to do these webinars out into Indian country. As we've mentioned, we feel there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there in Indian country. It's very important that we be able to help facilitate that process as tribal leaders and tribal members listen in, and as we have industry people that listen in, and obviously people from both the federal and the state governments that listen in. Our whole effort is about economic development. Our efforts are also about those opportunities that come as we go through this, what we're calling an energy transition period. And so myself, I am the chairman of the Four Corners Economic Development Group here in the Four Corners region. We cover 4 states. We're surrounded by a number of tribes in our region. We've been, over the number of decades, we've been very heavily involved in fossil energy and provided many good jobs and revenues, both to the state, to the counties, to the tribes. And now as we transition, and many things are happening, and those opportunities are rising. And so our efforts today is to try to bring some of those opportunities, as we've mentioned, out that are out there that are occurring, bring them to the forefront so that tribes can look at them, can think about them, can figure out how to participate in them. So today we're very pleased. We have 2 topics that we think will be of very good interest to our audience. The first one is about carbon capture. And we're very pleased that one of the owners of the San Juan Generating Station is able to join us and to present today what is going on in carbon capture in this region. What are the opportunities that are coming out? And so we have with us Mr. Hank Adair, the engineer with that organization, and as also an owner on behalf of the city of Farmington, that'll be joining us in that. It's a new technology. It's happening very close here at the San Juan Generating Station. About 60% of the employees are Native Americans. As they move forward, they will be transitioning into these new types of jobs that are rising in this area. And so again, we want the audience, we want tribal leaders, tribes to see it and be able to ask questions about where we are going with carbon capture. And this one is fairly close to us. So we're very pleased that Enchant Energy can join us. The other one is, again, another colleague of mine that I know. He's a general manager of an oil and gas company here in the Four Corners region. Very successful business person, but also he's also been in the public institution arena as well. His name is Mr. Randy Pacheco. Mr. Pacheco is currently involved in a number of initiatives that also will impact tribal lands and tribal communities. And so he's been working very diligently with a number of congressional people, state people, about an initiative that is happening that we title Orphan Wells. And as this transition occurs, there's a lot of questions about what is happening to those wells out there that are no longer producing or that have been abandoned. And so Mr. Pacheco has seen an opportunity there, and he's been working very closely with a number of key federal people to see if they can capture that. And from that side, we see that there's going to be, again, a lot of opportunities in the environmental, but also of those orphan wells that are titled orphan wells. So we're very pleased with both individuals, both colleagues that I can call colleagues that are well versed in these disciplines and areas. And so with that, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to Mr. Watchman to introduce the first speaker. Mr. Watchman.
Thank you, Steve, and great introduction. Yes, our first speaker is Hank Adair with the city of Farmington and and he'll be talking about the Enchant program. We did have Enchant speak to our group about a year ago, and given COVID and other things, there's been some slight setbacks, but it looks like as of today, great progress. And so one of the things that Steve mentioned is that, the city of Farmington is part owner in the San Juan power plant, but what's important for Indian country is obviously the closeness of the Navajo Nation to the city of Farmington and this plant. And so, it's great to see, well, at least at this point, the success and the high number of Native employees that do work at the power plant and the mine. And so, from a tribal economy standpoint, if those things were to no longer exist, we would definitely have some challenges with jobs. We did experience here on Navajo the closure of the Navajo Generation Station, and that forced many of our Navajo professionals to basically leave and relocate off the reservation. And so, with what's potentially happened at the San Juan power plant, we certainly want to keep families together and keep the economies going. And so we're pleased. We like what Enchant and City of Farmington are doing. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the time over to Hank and his group. I know they have a PowerPoint presentation. So welcome, Mr. Adair, and we appreciate your time. So I'll turn it over to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watchman, and UCA, thank you for the opportunity for myself to present, as well as Enchant, who will be joining me today. Some pretty exciting news from our project, and we were excited to share the presentation with you. Opportunity, if you all could confirm that somebody could confirm they can see the slides, that would be appreciated.
Yep.
Thank you. So the background on the project, again, thank you for the opportunity to present. City of Farmington and Enchant will be presenting today, and excited to share with you. For presentation today, I'll introduce myself initially. My name is Hank Adair. I'm the Utility Director for the Farmington Electric Utility System. When we've talked Indian country in the nation, where we're at, as a proud supporter of all the support that this project, its amount of employees, again, you mentioned 60% Navajo that have worked at the plant and also at the mine for the operations. And so a very essential project for our community and our region. Farmington Electric is a 1,700 square mile service territory system with 45,000 metered customers. And so appreciate the time. Also joining me today, quick introduce, is Cindy Crane and Peter Mandelstam as well. To give some background on the project, I'll start with how we got here as City of Farmington and a public-private partnership we have with Enchant. Originally, the plant San Juan Generating Station, a coal-fired operation, was 4 units of operation with 9 different owners across the entire West. At a point in time, 2 units of the station retired, San Juan 2 and 3, and the ownership of the plant reduced with those 2 units of retirement, with San Juan 1 and 4 remaining. And as part of the agreements, as some of those owners exited, it was made a decision that as the agreement for the plant reached its end in 2022, June 30th, that all the owners prior to that would decide whether they wanted to continue operation of the plant or not. So 9 owners went to 5 owners with 2 unit operations. And an agreement decided that at a certain time prior to 2022, the owners would decide whether they wanted to extend or not. City of Farmington, or Farmington Electric, was the only owner that decided to continue the operation of the plant. For us, and we'll talk about it in future slides, but it's a bundle of many things. One, it's for our utility and our low cost rates, having a reliable dispatchable generation in our resource, and we've seen the challenges recently on the Western grid and how that would support it. And basically for our tax base for our schools, and that would be in and out of the City of Farmington, but definitely within our service territory. And frankly, for the jobs that it has for our community and our economic development, and that broad span across our entire system here in our Northwest New Mexico. So with that, we decided as Farmington to continue. And we found partners, and we're pleased to find Enchant Energy Group as part of that discussion. And that's where carbon capture came into play and really got started, was the discussions with Enchant. And with that, with our agreement, we had that opportunity, looked at it, and what's really beneficial is it meets the Energy Transition Act levels. It was state legislation that was passed in 2019. The limit there is 1,100 pounds per net megawatt. And for the, or it says per megawatt, let me rephrase that. It just says 1,100 pounds per megawatt. The plant, San Juan Station, runs about 2,200 pounds. And we'll hear some exciting news on how this performance with carbon capture will be well below and down in the low 200 range. And Cindy Crane will talk about that and discuss it. With the owner's agreement, City of Farmington is in owner's agreements and discussions to transfer all those assets to the City of Farmington. And with that, City of Farmington is transferring 95% of those assets to Enchant Energy. And that's where we're at with it in negotiations. So I wanted to give you the background about how City of Farmington came to own the power plant. For the key officials for the City of Farmington and the public-private partnership, Nate Duckett, our mayor, has been visionary in a leadership role in how this plan is crucial to the effects of our economy and our industry and our community. Rob Mays is our city manager, given tactical direction at that time and discussions with myself, again, Hank Adair, and our city attorney, Jennifer Brickell, who has worked through a lot of the negotiations in the past. With that, I'll hand it over to Cindy Crane, and she'll take it from here for a minute. Cindy?
Thanks, Hank. We'll get rid of our echo here in just a second.
I think it'll probably stop now.
The main speaker, I think you have to do it. Our apologies. Do you want me to speak? Okay. All right. Sounds like we're under control. Nope.
That was good.
The bottom speaker.
It's just a delay from you.
Okay. All right. Can everyone hear me? Steve, are you getting an echo? They're getting an echo.
Yes, I'm getting an echo.
Okay, let us fix that. Need to go out of full screen.
We could exit and speak for hands.
There you go.
How about we do this? I am just gonna walk outside and I'm gonna do this from a different room so that we can not create those challenges for you. So I first want to thank Steve and Derek for this opportunity. It's always a great opportunity to be able to speak with this group. As Hank indicated, I'm Cindy Crane. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Enchant Energy Corporation. I am the retired CEO of Rocky Mountain Power and Pacific Corp. Spent 30 years in the industry, pretty much from end to end of the electric power industry utility structure. When I retired, I was running Rocky Mountain Power, had the largest coal generating fleet here in the Western United States, and have been heavily engaged in looking at carbon capture and CCUS technologies for about the last 10 years of my career. Additionally, I am the chair of the Energy Resource Council, which is the council, the board that oversees the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. As well there, we have been heavily engaged in advancing carbon capture and looking at the different ways to advance it as well as deploy it across assets. So thank you all very much. Joining me today and who will be speaking on a few of the slides is our Chief Operating Officer, Peter Mandelstam. Peter is a longtime energy expert as well. Peter has spent his career in entrepreneurial energy development, has started several companies, and focused heavily in the clean energy space. And so this is the next evolution of clean energy, and we're very excited about it. We couldn't do this without some pretty significant partners. And obviously, our first partner is the city of Farmington. And we wouldn't be here today without Hank and the city of Farmington's decision to raise their hand and be the brave owner that wants to stay in the plant and to enable this plant to be able to operate well into the future in this transitioning environment. Additionally, our great partners, Westmoreland Mining, they are the fuel supplier that is literally located right next door to the power plant. Just a tremendous secure of supply there. And they have fully leased and permitted reserves that are supporting the full expansion of the operations under carbon capture. So we're very excited about having that certainty. And then we've brought together what we consider, I like to call them the dream team, and that is our EPC consortium group, and that is Kiewit Power Constructors, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and Sargent and Lundy. And the reason I believe they're the dream team in doing what we're doing is because these folks have done this before. This is not their first rodeo. Kiewit Power Constructors was the EPC for the Petronova project. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, it was their technology, their amine technology that was used at Petronova and proven at scale at Petronova very successfully with a 92.4% capture rate over 3 years and an achieved 95% capture rate in the 3rd year of operation. And for folks interested, there is a DOE report on the DOE website, which is a report of that successful demonstration project. So San Juan really is that next evolution of the technology, moving from the scale that was producing 1.2 million metric tons of CO2 and capturing it, moving up to the scale of San Juan, which is over 6 million metric tons of CO2 annually. And then Sargent Lundy, just a tremendous partner, has been with us from the very start. They were the ones that helped Enchant do the feasibility, the pre-feasibility to look at this opportunity. And they are now part of our consortium for EPC. They are the engineering lead on this project. And they also bring just a significant amount of experience, not just at Petronova, where they were the owner's engineer on Petronova, but they have an entire portfolio of carbon capture projects in their pipeline right now that are active and going right now and at various stages. Certainly, the Department of Energy is a strong partner of ours. We do have a couple appropriation funding appropriations through the Department of Energy, which I will talk about in a little bit more detail because those areas are progressing well right now. And New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, New Mexico Tech, as we refer to them, is a critical partner of ours on one of the DOE appropriations focused on the geologic sequestration under the Carbon Safe Phase 3 program. Enchant, when we came into New Mexico, we focused on jobs and we focused on training very early. And our partnership with San Juan College is one of those examples on jobs. We entered into an MOU with San Juan College very early to focus on helping them start to train the future workforce, the carbon capture operating and future workforce that will be needed, not just for San Juan, but for around the country as carbon capture continues to accelerate and begin its deployment. And then we brought in financial partners of Bank of America very early again. And Bank of America is the largest tax equity institution in America. And as many of you probably realize, the Section 45Q tax credit is the critical path economic driver to advancing these technologies. And then in January, we hired CohnReznick. CohnReznick is a boutique firm that specializes in tax equity structuring and financing. They are the company that the Bank of Americas, the JP Morgans, the Wells Fargos, all these tax equity investment institutions, CohnReznick is who they look to pretty much as the good housekeeping seal of approval as they're pursuing interest in an investment, tax equity investment. CohnReznick joined us in January. They picked up our economic models, they vetted those, they built their own models, and they have now thoroughly built into those models full tax equity structuring. And in that process, they have validated the project's economics are strong. They've also validated that the project is fully financeable through tax equity. And they have spoken in parallel while they were doing their modeling. They spoke in parallel with tax equity institutions of Bank of America and JP Morgan, and they were able to firm up their assumptions that they were making in the models and test those with the actual tax equity investors. And so we feel very, very strong about our partnership with CohnReznick and our ability to advance into the financial markets. And then obviously we all need to have great lawyers. And so we do have our lead legal team at Sidley Austin. They are one of the top ranked US energy law firms. So without the partners, we wouldn't be where we are today. Hank, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. So why San Juan? San Juan Generating Station through my lens, right? Coming in from the outside is just a wonderful opportunity. One, because it's got scale. And that's what we need to do with this technology. We need to bring this technology to full scale and accelerate its deployment across the country and give us that great opportunity of significant climate mitigation in this process. It has a captive fuel supply, as I mentioned with Westmoreland Mining, with plenty of fuel supply for the continued operations of this facility under carbon capture. It also has significantly low emissions already today, and Hank will emphasize those in a little bit more detail. But it's located within approximately 21 miles of the CO2 pipeline, which is the Cortez pipeline. That pipeline provides CO2 access into the Permian Basin for enhanced oil recovery offtake, should that be the path that you want to pursue. It's also located, as you can see by the picture, we are in the heart of the Southwestern transmission grid, and we can take the electricity throughout New Mexico, throughout Colorado, throughout Utah, down through Nevada, Arizona, and all the way into California, should we want to take it to California. Great opportunity because as Enchant, as a developer, we're able to step into 95% of the ownership, and only for $1. Hank was very kind. He marked up his 95% rights transfer 100% to us. And so we're able to come in at $1. Being a former utility executive that's retired, I can tell you that the undepreciated asset burdens that most utilities are looking at when they try to consider things like carbon capture, I can't emphasize enough how much this adds to the economic viability of moving these projects forward. And then, as Hank alluded, we had great news from our partners, Mitsubishi, yesterday. We have been hinting and pushing with them about moving up the scale from the 90% capture performance guarantee that they had previously said they would provide us. And with their success, not just at Petronova, but other advancements in their design, their technology and enhancements since Petronova, and the additional feed studies that they're working on and completing, they have communicated that they are moving up the curve with us, and that is the ability to strip up to 95% of CO2 from their technology in the facilities. And then with Kiewit leading our EPC consortium, they have committed to provide a fixed price EPC contract with a lump sum and full project wrap. So as you can imagine, for a financing of a project of this magnitude, that carbon capture performance guarantee coupled with a fixed price full wrap EPC is absolutely critical as when you go to the market for financing. Next slide. Over to you, Hank.
Thank you, Cindy. And so a lot of the plan and the history that gets us there, and of course, carbon capture needs a very clean flue gas stream before you get there. And the plant over many, many years has done a significant amount of projects and upgrades. The plant has invested nearly 500+ million, as you can see, upon the closure of 2 and 3 in San Juan's units 1 and 4. They have low NOx burners, under fire and over fire air. They do have SNCR installation for regional haze, activated carbon injection, and very, very good efficiency. Also looked at for the MATS rules as a benchmark was the performance of San Juan Station. Bag houses for mercury and particulate control, pulse jet bag houses, and wet flue gas desulfurization with limestone forced oxidation. The other thing with the plant is it's very water savvy, if you will, and is a ZLD, zero liquid discharge facility. And so there is no water that leaves site once it's brought to the site, and has state-of-the-art brine concentrators, etc. With that, I'll hand it over to Peter.
This is a schematic of the current assets and the future assets. Cindy, do you want to cover this? You're back.
Sure, no problem. I was just relocating into Hank Adair's office. So yeah, so you know, a lot of people want to indicate how complicated this project might be. And what this schematic is really intended to do is to demonstrate that it's not as complicated as we might think it is. And so as you can see right here, we have our power plant. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the power plant, obviously the center of all here. We have over here our secure coal supply coming from the Westmoreland San Juan mine, and we'll be selling electricity. You know, obviously, in order to operate the plant, we need to be able to sell the electricity. The great thing about that is this carbon capture company that's going to be sitting right next door to the power plant is actually a paying customer. That carbon capture customer is going to purchase steam and electricity, as well as the flue gas stream, and they equate to 29% of the power plant's revenue, or output, I should say. It's actually a greater percentage of the revenue. And, you know, again, referencing back to my utility hats, as a utility executive, we always looked at that as a parasitic load. And that's the great thing about the structure with Enchant and Farmington, is that carbon capture island is not a parasitic load. It is a paying customer, and it's the best kind of customer you want. They are a base load customer for a significant chunk of your offtake. So from there, we've got the Cortez pipeline. It's going to go over, or the connector pipeline, excuse me. It's going to go over to the Kinder Morgan Cortez. But along the way, we have a diverter station that will divert to the geologic formation for direct geologic injection in the San Juan Basin formations that we have here, obviously targeting closer to the Entrada, which is about 10,000 feet below the surface. We are targeting 10 injection wells that will be EPA Class 6 CO2 injection wells, and then 3 monitoring wells. And what this means is that as we are operating the plant and capturing the CO2, from a permanent storage perspective, we will have optionality. Our primary strategy is direct geologic sequestration. And the reason is because that is certain. You know it's there, you can go there anytime. And but we want the flexibility. As a CEO, my job is risk management. And I want to make sure that we mitigate any risk associated with capturing that 45Q tax credit. And that means we have to have permanent storage. So we want the flexibility of being able to go to the Permian for enhanced oil recovery. Said another way, I want certainty through the geologic field. I'm willing to ride oil prices up for the use of EOR, but I'm not willing to take the financial risk of riding oil prices down, which is why our base strategy is 100% direct geologic sequestration. Next slide. Peter?
Thank you, Cindy. As many of you know, ESG, environment, social, and governance, is an evolving and important structure. It's integral to the way that Enchant Energy Corporation is organized. It's very much a part of our DNA. And we wanted to talk about the very close relationship, as Cindy and Hank have talked about, with the Navajo Nation. This plant was constructed in the late 1970s and then expanded in the early 80s. Navajo Nation members built the plant, as you heard from Derek and Steve. Now 60% work at the plant. Several generations of Native Navajo have entered the middle class. These are high-paying union wages with full benefits. We take seriously our commitment to our neighbors in the Navajo Nation. We in Farmington, Enchant is here. We live and work here. And so what we are doing is through the promotion of ESG, we're having what's called a triple bottom line. The triple bottom line, of course, we need to stay in business and get a return on our investment. The second bottom line, of course, is promotion of a better climate through the use of this mitigation technology, this pollution control technology. And then the social component, the third of the three bottom lines, is our intimate relationship with the Navajo. As Cindy mentioned, we have this workforce development and job training program at San Juan College. We are going to train the next generation of carbon capture workers. And of course, the biggest thing we can do is provide lots of new high-paying union jobs. You'll see a slide later, 2 million worker hours just for the carbon capture island. As you see here, Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase spent many months determining that our project meets the ESG goals. We're very proud of that. And as Cindy mentioned, we're working with Bank of America. And then finally, this is something that we always get asked: can a retrofit of a coal-fired power plant be considered ESG? The answer is yes. I commend all of you an article on the front page of today's New York Times, which talks about the challenge of getting to a net zero economy. It talks favorably about carbon capture. It discusses what I think many of us know is the challenge of having batteries operate for more than 4 to 6 hours, which is their current limitation. The world's largest battery is less than half the size of San Juan. And so what we at Farmington Enchant say in forums like this is there is a technology that gets you 95% of the way to a perfect outcome that's technically feasible and economically feasible today. And that, of course, is carbon capture. Next slide. Cindy?
Yes, thank you. As you guys are probably aware better than most, there is just a significant amount of momentum growing in this country around carbon capture. And I would say, it's been a long time coming, but we need to seize the moment and we need to get it moving. And so we were extremely pleased with the bipartisan Energy Act of 2020 that was passed and how strong that bipartisan support was. It did a lot of great things. It obviously extended the runway for qualifying for the tax credit by only 2 years, though. And it established a lot of direction to the Department of Energy for funding the advancement of the technology. We think that's critical. It also directed the DOE with funding for carbon capture demonstration projects, 6 of them, and explicitly called out, including on coal-fired electric generating facilities. And so we're very excited that that is a great launching point of where we need to go. At the end of the day, it needs to get appropriated and fully funded. And that is the area of focus that we have right now, and we would ask everyone to have right now, which is pushing for the full appropriated funding for advancing this technology, and specifically for these large-scale demonstration projects. Great opportunity is literally happening before our eyes today, and that is the markup on the infrastructure bill. There is some tremendous opportunity there to make sure that the carbon capture, great work that was done in December in the Energy Act of 2020, that carbon, all that great work is fully funded through the infrastructure bill and through other appropriation avenues. So that's my pitch for everybody to call your congressman or woman in order to plant those seeds. But there is just a tremendous amount of legislative activity around carbon capture. And one of those is obviously to extend that runway 5 more years. And Peter and I were in DC about 3 weeks ago making the rounds, and with great emphasis on the need to get that extension. That extension, if we're going to truly deploy carbon capture, we need a runway that allows many projects to be able to get into here and get qualified. And that means we need time. And so adding 5 years to that runway of time, we think is critical for the country's ability to deploy carbon capture technology and meet our climate goals. Also, direct pay is a great option. It stimulated the wind energy business back in 2008-9, coming out of the recession. And it can do the same thing here. And our advocacy around that is that it needs to be technology agnostic. It can't be trying to pick certain technologies. And then there's obviously a lot of play and movement around increasing the tax credit price, and then lengthening the tax credit duration from 12 years to 20. I will tell you, from an economic viability standpoint, the game changer on that list is extending the length of the tax credit. You know, simply adding another 8 years is a huge economic difference in advancing this technology. So climate mitigation is a key focus. Obviously, San Juan is the largest carbon capture project in the world, although I did see this morning that Shell has announced a carbon capture project up in Alberta that would be much larger. So I'm willing to concede that if it's real and it proceeds, then we will be the largest carbon capture in the United States, and certainly the largest carbon capture project on a fossil fueled generating facility in the world. With the up to 95% warranted carbon removal, San Juan will be the lowest emitting CO2 per megawatt hour large-scale fossil fuel plant in the world. And with that up the curve to 95%, that CO2 intensity will be well below 200 pounds per megawatt hour. Now, previously at the 90%, we were at 250. I can tell you that those numbers are, I'm conservative on my 200 at the 95. The numbers Sergeant Lundy has calculated for us start with a 1. And so we are extremely excited about that news. And to put that into context, that is more than 80% lower than a combined cycle natural gas facility, whether existing one or the newest technology there. We'll be capturing up to 6.5 million metric tons of CO2 annually. And also, to put that into perspective, the largest direct air capture facility, it's been announced, is projecting 1 million metric tons annually as well. And a great byproduct of treating the flue gas for the capture of CO2 is we will get further SO2 reduction benefits in this process. And the analysis that Sergeant Lundy has done for us indicates that we could see up to an additional 50% reduction of SO2 just through the process of treating the flue gas for capturing the carbon. We have two great funding paths going right now. One is a DOE feed study funding appropriation that in total with cost share is $9.4 million. That's with Mitsubishi and Sergeant Lundy. We do have Kiewit coordinating with that. And we are well down the road in that. We just got the latest Keystone milestone deliverables from Mitsubishi. Our design basis is completed. We've completed all the stack testing, and we're now reviewing the equipment list. And what I can tell you is the benefit of Mitsubishi's experience since Petronova and the additional projects they're working on, they have now been able to incorporate all of that into our design basis. And so we are seeing the benefits coming from that. We are on a path and a schedule with the feed study to have the full balance of plant engineering by year end. And as you all are, I'm sure, very familiar, that is an absolutely critical piece. That is literally the blueprints to build the house and be able to actually start construction. So balance of plant end of year. We will be advancing the EPC construction contract negotiations in parallel and having the full costing and have that locked down by the first quarter of next year. Alongside that, we have our partners with New Mexico Tech, also includes the national labs here in New Mexico and many others. And we partnered and went and got a total $19 million project, of which a little over 17 million is coming from the DOE. And that project is focused on the geologic sequestration formation. They have advanced their geologic models so far, and they have identified the location for the test well. They'll be drilling a stratigraphic test well. We're hopeful that that well will be drilled this summer. We've also identified the need for 10 production injection wells, and we are currently in draft mode on the EPA Class 6 permit applications for those injection wells. Great meeting last week, actually, that Peter and I had with the EPA. We met with their team that will be the recipients of all of these Class 6 applications that will be coming in from the country, across the country, to support carbon capture. They assured us they are staffed up, they are ready to go. And most importantly, they assured us they have established a process that will enable them to issue permits for Class 6 wells within 24 months of having a deemed complete application. So we're very excited about that news as well. Our schedule is operational with our first carbon capture train by the end of 2024. So that is a significant progress to be able to start the mitigation path towards our Paris Accord commitments, excuse me. Hank?
I have the next slides. And so we've talked an awful lot of technical, a lot of progress, and a lot of benefits that we've seen with our project and where it's headed. But I think carbon capture comes down to people as well. And I think one of the key points on why City of Farmington chose to continue this project is to preserve the 1,500 direct and indirect jobs. So we think there's around 500 full-time direct workforce jobs that will be needed between the plant, the carbon capture island, and the mine to continue operation. Based on independent studies that were done by our community college here and also by the DOE, that correlates to 1,500 when you include direct and indirect jobs in our community. Again, a lot of those are Navajo. We talked the percentages previously. It creates economic development, and Peter will talk here in a little bit about how many man hours we see for construction project. It's not the long term, and that's key and critical when you talk this project for its 95% removal. Those are real-time, long-term jobs that people can retire on or plan for the future for. They're not construction and go away jobs. But with this, we have the construction jobs that go with it. 2 million man-hour worker hours, or I should say worker hours, are out there for the construction of this project. That's a lot of people that are going to be coming here for hotels, you know, are going to be staying here and eating in our restaurants. And so there's a lot of money that goes into that. It includes the pipeline project, the well project we've already talked about. We become a pioneer in carbon capture, you know, and develop the workforce that Peter's already talked about with San Juan College. That has an opportunity to be a springboard for our community here locally, to be on a global or national scene, for people to come here to learn, to progress this towards 2 degrees C, if the scientists were accurate for what's needed, because carbon capture will be needed for it. And lastly, we've talked, and Mr. Watchman talked about it here previously, you know, with Navajo and Four Corners discussions in Escalante, there's a lot of plants that are going down around our region, and we want to be the one that keeps up and running locally for our economy. And we see the benefit all the way around. For our ratepayers specific to Farmington Electric, I'll say that we have some of the lowest rates in the region. And in our generation portfolio, San Juan Station is 24% of our annual megawatt hour needs or generation, or what we consume. So nearly a quarter of our generation or our portfolio comes from San Juan. And with that, it's been the lowest in the region, and we've continued to keep our rates the lowest in the region. Probably 8 to 10% lower than the IOUs, and 15 to 25 to 40% lower than the cooperatives in our region. So it's an additional benefit, not only for our customers, but also for our economics and our economic diversification that our community is looking at. It's also baseload accessible, cost-effective, dispatchable power. I can tell you specific for us, the city of Farmington, we were able to weather the storm of the polar vortex and also the fires in California last year that affected the energy imbalance market. As a team, we see the effects of both markets in our local region on purchase power and energy pricing. By having San Juan available, it helped us to weather both of those storms and events throughout the time, and we'd like to see that continue. Not only is it good for us, but it's good for all of those utilities out there looking for that low cost, long-term, economic, sound, environmental friendly rates and energy, if you will. And I think those are the key points that I wanted to make on this slide. For our schools and students, I think I've talked about that a little bit, but I'll go through it quickly. One of the biggest hit for us is the Central Consolidated School District. Although not within the city of Farmington, it's within our community and territory. And Central Consolidated actually had bonds out there that were based on tax base that come from the plant. And so it puts a major impact on Central Consolidated. And so we want to continue that opportunity for tax base for our schools and school districts. San Juan College, we talked about the springboard of what the property tax does there. But not only that, is the plan has historically done scholarships for the community college. And often the community colleges supported the plant with customized safety training, leadership training, etc. All of those have a benefit for the college. They have a benefit for the plant. We want to keep that symbiotic relationship continuing. And then again, for the schools, it's important. If you've got to have people for schools, and we don't want our people that are working today to lose their jobs and leave the area to find work and take their children with them. Schools, families, everything that goes with it. With that, I'll hand it over to Peter to talk about the union workforce.
Thank you, Hank. I really love talking about union labor. I grew up in a union household. My dad worked for the Garment Workers Union. My son has heard stories of the exploitation of workers. You all have, of course, seen the national history and particularly the regional history of exploitation of underserved communities. We take our commitment to union labor very seriously. When Enchant came and join this public-private partnership with Farmington. It was a good cultural fit, talking about union workforce. We met with the 17 labor leaders in New Mexico. We immediately agreed to a full union job with a project labor agreement. The PLA has been negotiated. The carbon capture construction alone is 1.4 billion. There'll be another 100 million or so of additional. We've called on all of those three scopes, the power plant deferred maintenance, of course, the carbon capture island, and all the CO2 pipeline and infrastructure that Cindy talked about, to be full union jobs with PLAs. You see here on the slide the various trades. We have good relations with all of them, and we take our commitment seriously. For the carbon capture island, next slide. Our contractor Kiewit has done a detailed analysis. You'll see the various union sectors on the left and the project work hours. As Hank said, 2 million worker hours. That's a significant commitment, hundreds of millions of dollars of union wages. We're happy to pay that. I think you folks know, but I just want to reiterate, union workers are skilled workers. Union workers are safe workers. We've committed to them, and we're very proud to be working with them. As we move down the detailed engineering, as Cindy said, for the San Juan Station deferred maintenance and the CO2 pipeline infrastructure, we'll publish additional worker hours and union trades. Cindy?
Thank you, guys. So where are we? 2020 was a period of time where we were initiating a lot of things in parallel. And you can see those on the slide. Obviously, the securing of the DOE grants for both FEED study and the New Mexico sequestration project were critical path items achieved there. And those are now in full-blown process of activity on their schedules in order to achieve their deliverables and milestones that we need done there. In 2021, we've been focused on making sure we continue the pipeline of development capital it's necessary to get us where we need to go. We've been negotiating on power offtake and CO2 offtake, and we are targeting to lock those down at a level, not necessarily 100% here this year. We do have several executed term sheets for electricity offtake, and we do have an indicative offer on another one. And we have been in late stage negotiations with a CO2 storage provider that would take our CO2 at the fence line. We've been in discussions, obviously, with Westmoreland Mining. We're discussing advancing 2 different coal supply agreements, one that secures the remainder of the coal that is in the existing mining district and the existing seam that the longwall is currently producing out of the panel. And then the second one is the long-term supply, which will come from the new mining district of the leased reserves and permitted reserves that Westmoreland has. So we're great progress in those discussions. We're hoping to lock down what I call the bridge agreement, which is those tons that are already there. It's important to be able to make sure we keep the coal miners working, and that is our objective with the bridge supply agreement. We're obviously in discussions on the actual transfer of the plant, the 95%. We have a meeting with the owners to advance those discussions on Monday in Albuquerque. And we did file our CO2 pipeline permitting on New Year's Eve of last year. So we are in process on the CO2 pipeline permitting, and we are preparing to initiate additional permitting that stems around the carbon capture island and other aspects. So this year, a very heavy lift. Obviously, we need to achieve the milestones of our FEED study with the balance of plant engineering. We did get the equipment list. We're looking at that in very extensively right now. The importance of that to us is identifying the long lead equipment priorities so we can get those moving forward. And we just spoke with the Water and Natural Resources Interim Committee yesterday. We do believe that it is important for the state of New Mexico to focus on bringing legal clarity to state lands and the pore space associated with state lands. And so we did have a good discussion with the interim committee yesterday. And then Peter and I have been heavily involved at the federal level, advancing pore space legislation for federal lands, working directly with Senator Barrasso's office and Senator Manchin's office. And we did a pretty extensive markup on their initial draft pore space legislation. And then we are preparing to file an application for some loan program, which would be for long-term debt financing. And we will advance that process here as we enter into the second half, further into the second half of the year. Next slide, Hank. So next year, complete the feed study, finalize the EPC, hire the plant operator, secure the construction financing, which we're already looking at. We will initiate long-term debt financing from RUS. That will be geared towards the investments in the power plant units, and then targeting commencement of construction of the carbon capture facility upon ownership transfer of the plant. And then securing the EPC class 6 injection wells, and then obviously advancing all aspects of construction through to commercial operations, with the first train the end of 24 and being fully decarbonized by no later than June of 2025. And that allows the enablement of the full capture of the 45Q. So from there, just maybe to let you know, we do in the packet, you will be posting this presentation package. For those that may have questions about the technology, we have included some slides on the technology, Mitsubishi's technology. And then we've also included some additional slides for the New Mexico Tech Project on the geologic sequestration work that is going on. And we wanted those out there for reference that you could access after the presentation. So with that, I think, Steve, we're turning it back to you and Derek.
Okay, Derek.
Wow. Thank you, Cindy and Hank and Peter. Great update and a lot of potential. And so, you know, for us, you know, obviously the synergies relative to the Navajo Nation and Jicarilla and the Utes being in proximity to city of Farmington in this plant, we see a lot of synergies. And so, you know, for us, as Steve mentioned, economic development and the continuation of jobs, that's very, very important. And so we'll take questions at the end, I know in the interest of time. And so, but let's move on to Randy Pacheco, and he's going to talk about, as Steve mentioned, abandoned mines and P&O, or it's a new term I'm getting to understand. So, but I will turn the time over to Randy, and he's going to talk about abandoned wells and orphan wells. And you know, we know that, you know, a lot of reservations do have a lot of orphan wells, abandoned wells. And so, you know, the question is, how do you deal with that? And from a national policy perspective, you know, what's in store? And so, you know, a lot of tribes have benefited from oil and gas activities, but, you know, now there's a new concern. And so, Randy, I will turn the time over to you, and welcome. We appreciate you joining our webinar. So,
Hey.
floor is yours, Randy, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Derek and Steve and Sheila and the USCA. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I also want to thank Cindy, Hank, and Peter. So I'm a resident here of Farmington, New Mexico, and I appreciate you guys saving the jobs and keeping our electricity rates low. We appreciate that. So thank you very much. So I'm going to start a little bit. Get my PowerPoint up here. Share screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Again, and I especially want to say thanks to Steve. Steve and I have been friends for a long time. We've always been around energy and energy issues. And I know once in a while we have lunch and we talk about these issues and what's happening. I'm going to talk a little bit about A+ well service, but it's really not about A+ well service. What my presentation is really about is what's happening on the federal level as far as orphaned wells. So when you drill a well, an oil and gas well in the United States, and most of you are probably familiar with this, you drill the well and then you operate it, and then at some point you have to plug and abandon that well. You have to take the well back to its original state. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But my presentation, if you notice the dates, the years up there, it's 21 to 31. And what I see, I'm a speculator, and what I see coming the next 10 years, I think is going to be strategic to the oil and gas business, is going to be strategic to the United States. And there's going to be a lot of implications as far as what's going to happen and what's being demanded by the federal government, the state, and the taxpayers of the oil and gas industry now. So let me move on to the next slide. Is it going? Yes, okay. So I just wanted to put this in perspective. So these are the oil and gas basins. This was as of 2007. And if you read the very bottom, this shows active wells. So, you could argue that it's probably some of the inactive wells there. For sure, no orphaned wells. Orphaned wells, by definition, are those wells which don't have an owner anymore. So if an operator goes out of business, typically the well will revert to the state, and it's basically the state's issue and problem to deal with. But this is an incredible overview of all the wells. Specifically, we want to pay very close attention to the offshore wells. So the Gulf of Mexico around Houston, around Louisiana, and those are difficult wells to plug in, that they're offshore. So that raises the price significantly. So when we talk a little bit about plugging and abandoning wells, it's mostly onshore. So in 2016, I joined A+ Well Service, as Steve indicated. They brought me on as the general manager. Since then, I've been promoted to the CEO. Part of my responsibility was to expand the business and take it to new areas and develop new opportunities for the company. So we started out in the Four Corners area up there in Farmington, New Mexico. Since my arrival, we've expanded to the DJ Basin up in Greeley, Colorado, just north of Denver, and down south in Hobbs in the Permian. Some of the customers we've been working for, we've been in business for about 30 years now. We work Chevron, ConocoPhillips, the majors. We work for the states. Again, typically those wells that become orphaned are now property of the state. So the state of Colorado, the state of New Mexico. We worked for Red Willow Production Company, which is owned by the Southern Indian Ute Tribe, and the Jicarillas. We've worked for the Navajo Nation as well. So in the DJ Basin, we operate 4 packages. So these are P&A packages. And what is a P&A package? Well, a P&A package, a plug and abandonment package, consists of a rig, a pump truck, and a wire line, some tanks. As you can see in the photo, that's a well that we're currently plugging. And that's typically what's required for a well to be plugged. And a well could be plugged, take anything from 2 to 3 days up to a week. You could plug 1 a week. About 1 a week is a good average. In the San Juan Basin, I operate 3 packages. And in the Permian, I'm only offering wireline services as of today. So I want to talk a little bit about what's really happening and speculation, what's happening in the country, and what I see as CEO for A+ Well Service, and where our opportunities and our challenges are going to lie over the next 10 years. So we have the federal government now heavily involved in plugging and abandonment from both rules and funding. And that is
Is that Randy that froze?
I think it is. Randy? Hey, Michelle, are you there?
Yeah, I just let him know that his screen froze. It looks like he may be restarting the program. Hopefully we can get him back in just a moment.
Okay.
May take a second.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, of course. Sorry for the delay, everyone. In the meantime, while we're waiting, if anyone has any questions, we'll be happy to answer them while he logs back on.
Well, Randy is trying to rejoin us. We're open for questions for on the enchant and the city of Farmington work.
Derek, I got one question for Cindy that came in. Cindy, the question was, is the Department of Energy's new administration in support of carbon capture?
Thank you for the question. So Peter and I, when we were in Washington, D.C. about 3 weeks ago, we did meet with the DOE and the fossil fuel group, the new fossil fuel and carbon management, as it's been renamed. And they are supportive of the carbon capture and advancing the technology. Now, the 2 DOE grants, obviously, that we have today were prior to that administration. And so, we will need, obviously continue to test that. But all indicator is that, yes, they are. They have a extremely strong advocate and expert that they have folded into the process. Sarah Forbes, I believe is her name. And she's participated in both our online meetings as well as when we were in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I see there's a question in the chat down below too, Steve. Is that the one?
Yeah. So the other question in the chat is, well, you can see that, Cindy, or Peter. Can you see
Yeah,
it?
reading it, this project shows a lot of coordination, cooperation over many sectors that pertain to the developing of a final project. What are the keys to getting started and the kind of longevity described? Developers, legislators, entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera. I think for a project this big, and I'll start as city as Farmington, it takes every one of those, right? And it starts with getting the key people. As Cindy mentioned, we have key people on a carbon capture project that have already done this before, been there, done that. And the other thing you get from that is the lessons learned. Now, you've seen the DOE report for, let's say, Petronova and the positives of it, 92% removal, but there were also lessons learned in that. And we've seen those be incorporated into the design that is being considered or being progressed in the FEED study. So that's an example of what it is. Get the right key players, get the right project and the pieces and portions there. And then if you do, that'll be successful on a go forward. Also, the FEED study as much academic as outcome, if you will. So you want it to be built so that people can maintain it every day. Living in a power plant and building them and designing them as I have for many years, you have to think with the end in mind of that long-term approach of great, you've built it. Now, how do you maintain it, fix it, get access for the operators, the mechanics, the electricians to continue to work on it? And so I think what I've seen that's been really beneficial is that's actually happened. Related to developers, I'll hand it over to Cindy as well for that.
Thanks, Hank. I stepped into Enchant after the project was already getting started and moving. And so I'm going to share with you my observation. And coming from a vertically integrated regulated utility, I think what it takes first and foremost is entrepreneurial thinking, number one. Number two, people that are thinking out of the box, and they're not thinking from a standpoint of traditional, because you really have to look at the potential, the opportunities from every dimension. And you need to be able to do that and not stifle that, because that's the ultimate value that creates good opportunities. And then I would echo what Hank said. From there, obviously you have to do due diligence. You have to do your feasibility assessment. That is what Enchant did before they came in and committed to the project. And you need to bring in partners that can bring the expertise and the experience to do that. And then roll that model forward as you start advancing that project, and continue to look at who's the expert, who's the right partner to fold in at the various different times. Because it takes a village, let's just say, in order to do something like this. And if you're an organization that thinks you want to build a big organization structure, it will do nothing but cripple. As you saw, Enchant Energy is Peter Mandelstam and myself. The rest of everything that Enchant is doing here is just bringing the partners together and providing the vision and the direction, and being the cheerleader, to keep it going and move it forward. And then you have to work it behind the scenes. And that's where the legislative folks come in at every level, whether it's the local level, whether it's the state level, whether it's the national level. You really have to be able to work behind the scenes. And I put that in the cheerleading role, because you have to go out, you have to build support, you have to build momentum, but you need to do that while not disrupting the actual advancement progress that the experts are working for you to do.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add, this is Peter. I echo what Cindy said. Obviously, the vision of our two co-founders, Jason Selch and Larry Heller, it's the old Wayne Gretzky, the hockey legend, who said that you skate to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. Jason and Larry understood, along with, of course, Hank and his colleagues in Farmington, that there was a viable business here. We've been really amazed at how the carbon capture technology has matured. We salute Mitsubishi, who's really climbed a rather tall hill, but is now at the top of it, we believe, the global leader. So I think the answer to the question is, as Cindy said, it's a combination of factors, but certainly vision and understanding where the market and the technology is going are key.
Okay, got Randy back. Randy?
I'm back. I don't know what happened to my internet connection. It works every day except for when you need it, right?
Well, back to you, Randy.
All right. Let me
Glad you
bring
could
up.
join us again.
All right. Thank you, guys. Hopefully I won't have any problems. Let's get back to, maybe I'm gonna have some, hang on one second. Let's see here. Okay, I'm back. You guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'll be quick. Okay, I think this is where I left off. Is this correct?
Yes.
The last slide you remember?
Yes.
Okay, so the point I wanted to make here is you're now starting to see the federal government become involved in the plugging and abandonment business. And I say business because I see them also as an opportunity for A+ well service for the federal government to become a customer now as they look at the orphaned well issue. We're also receiving now more opportunities from the majors because of the ESG goals that they're trying to meet. So on my side, the demand is growing more and more from both the states, the producers, and now the federal government. So what I'd like to do is share a quick little video with you, and this comes from Canada. The Canadian government has been involved in the plugging and abandonment business for quite some time. And I say business because, they're funding these orphaned wells. They're looking at not only how they stimulate the economy, but how do they create a stronger workforce and what they're doing for the future and the environment. And I think they've always been very forward thinking when it comes to energy and energy development in Canada. Will it play? I think I gotta do this. Technology, come on. Oh, come on. Let's see. Why not? I don't have the technology. Well, I'm just having technical difficulties. So I'm not going to be able to share the video with you, I guess. So,
If you're able to send it to me separately, we can add it to the website later.
yeah, I will. I'll send it to you. So basically, the video talks about how much money the government up in Canada is spending on orphaned wells and what they're doing and the projects they're looking at and the development of their workforce in the future, as I stated earlier. So I want to talk about the two bills that are being circulated around the federal government right now, both from the House side and the Senate side. So on the House side, they're looking at about $8 billion for plugging orphaned wells. That money will be issued, I believe, to the states because the states have typically operated the orphaned well funds within their states, and it makes a tremendous amount of sense. On the Senate side, they're looking at a bill about $4 billion that would go out to the states for orphaned wells. I'm really concerned about that for a couple of reasons. One, I think as there becomes more and more orphaned wells that make their way to the states, will the states have the capacity to plug the orphaned wells? And will the states be able to ramp up fast enough to take advantage of this opportunity that's coming? And again, you have pressure from the operators. They want now to plug their wells. So there's a lot of concern I have. And will these wells be plugged properly? So if you pump, let's just say $4 billion into the oil and gas industry on the service side, because I'm on the service side, and you're asking the service companies to ramp up. You're asking service companies, is there an opportunity for you to take advantage of this opportunity? So I think good intentions could create issues in the future. So we want to be sure when this money is released from the federal government, and it will be tied probably to infrastructure, that you plug these wells properly. Because what you could create is plugging wells that leak somewhere in the future. And if these wells are leaking, you're going to have to go back in and drill them back out. So now you've created a bigger issue that could be more expensive. So I would strongly advocate that the federal government look at this and be very cautious when they release this money, and they have complete oversight as we develop programs to plug orphaned wells. And there's a lot I could say there, but I know I don't have a lot of time to go into that. So the ideas that are coming out of the federal government, there'll be some initial grant money to look at, how all of this gets started and what are the opportunities there for the states to reduce the methane that's being released to the environment from some of these orphaned wells. there's also some funds in there to specifically target public lands and tribal grant money there to target. So it'll be interesting to see what actually comes out when this bill does pass. And I have been working with Senator Martin Heinrich's office, Representative Teresa Fernandez Ledger, and Senator Ben Ray Lujan. And I know that from New Mexico's delegation, they're strong supporters of this idea. And I think that this idea is going to continue to move forward. I don't believe the federal government's going to say, okay, it's part of infrastructure and we're done. I think they will continue to be involved because there's just going to be more and more orphan wells that we're going to see over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's a complex issue when you have an aging oil field with these oil wells exchanging hands, oil and gas wells exchanging hands many, many times. It's a very complex issue. And that's about all I have. I just want to thank you all. Let's see if this will play. Yeah, that plays. These are some of my guys, and they're currently working. This is the DJ Basin, and they're working on plugging a well. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. There is one question that came in, Randy. The question is, does the Department of Energy or the Department of Interior know how many orphan wells are on tribal lands?
I do not know the answer to that question, Steve. I would guess to say they probably don't. I don't think anybody has a real sense of how many orphaned wells are out there. Because you remember, we've been drilling wells since the Drake well way back when, Colonel Drake. And though back then they didn't keep record of these wells, so it's anybody's guess how many orphaned wells are really out there.
Okay. Derek?
Yeah, thank you. A very interesting topic. I know that years ago I did some work with the Seneca Nation up in New York, and they had a lot of challenges with the orphan and abandoned wells. And the question was, who has responsibility for that? Especially on Indian country, Indian lands. A lot of it is in concert with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Mineral Management Services. And so, but a big unknown. And so this interesting area. So thank you, Randy. Great presentation and great work. And so I guess let's throw it out there and see if we have any. I see we have a bunch of questions, and I don't know if we answer all of them, Steve, or
no, there's a bunch of them.
Okay.
But in lieu of time, I don't think, but I do think we have a Department of Energy official that just joined us, Mr. Joe Giovi. Joe, did you want to say something?
Well, welcome, Joe. And I guess in the interest of time, we're basically an hour and 35 minutes into the program, and we did have a little challenge with Randy. And so I think what we'll do is there's a question: does the grant provide funding to determine if wells exist? Let's throw it to Randy. Randy, there's a question here that says that the grant funding that you're talking about, is there provisions in there to maybe identify, kind of the issue, and gets back to the question of how many abandoned wells and orphan wells are there on reservation land? Does what you're talking about cover that potentially?
From what little bit I know about the about what's being proposed, I wouldn't know what's in there as of today.
Okay.
I think we have to wait to see when it comes out,
Got it.
then we could take advantage of that.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm turning over to Mike Moore with USCA. He's always great at helping to summarize our discussions here. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're almost at the end here. And so Mike, I know you've been listening in, so I'd like to turn the time over to you, and maybe Sheila from USCA, and if maybe Joe from DOE wants to chime in, he can. But Mike, maybe you can help summarize this presentation. Great. Oh, there you go. Sheila has a picture of
This is yeah. This is a Pennsylvania oil well in, actually, this may be, yeah, I think this is 1913. So you can see what you're up against with old oil wells.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, but before I turn over to Mike, in terms of fossil energy, we all know that oil and gas and coal, for the most part, we're probably and still are lifeblood for many tribes, tribal governments, and tribal economies. And so, we're now moving into our carbon reduction program. And so, as Steve and I are obviously interested in the question for the tribe is how do you make that transition? But also, if you look at what Enchant and the city of Farmington are doing, are there creative ways for tribes, tribal companies, and tribal energy companies to figure out how to continue to benefit from their fossil resources until such time that the renewable and our new way of thinking about energy production changes? And so there's definitely a long transition that we believe tribes are going to have to endure. And so these conversations and partnerships and support and assistance of our federal government, we think is very, very important for tribes. And so, that's the primary reason why, and we're happy to be able to engage in these conversations. And so, but I'd like for Mike Moore with USCA to give us some of his thoughts, and then we can move to a conclusion for the seminar. So go ahead, Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and Steve as well. All the presenters is awesome as usual. Each time you put these groups together, tend to walk away with a lot more new and useful insights. Before I get started, we've got Joe Giove from the Department of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management is its official title, I believe. And Joe would like to actually give a response to the posture on CCS that Cindy was asked. And Joe, if you're there, why don't you grab that real quick while we've got everybody still online, because I think it's important to hear from you. And by the way, all of us thank you in the department for the support that you give all of us to be able to put these programs on.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So I was just listening in as I listened to all of these. They're very informative. I appreciate Steve and Derek taking the time and energy to partner with USCA to put these on. And the question came up about how does the new administration feel about carbon capture and storage? I've been in the office. I've been in the coal office for 17 years now. I think I'm the second most senior person. When you're around that long, you've seen some things. I was originally hired under the Clinton administration. So I've been through a lot of these transitions, and usually when the new crew comes in, they obviously want to make some changes. There's some things that the previous group that did that they didn't like, or some policies the previous crew had that they aren't too crazy about. And so things tend to change over the years. Carbon capture and storage is one of the areas where we don't see a lot of change. We haven't seen a lot of change, and I don't suspect we're going to see any change this time. For all of us realize that to get to net zero emissions, which is the goal, we're going to need carbon capture and storage on fossil resources. And so the Biden administration's folks have been very supportive of carbon capture and storage. It's been in all their projections. It's in their plans. If you've seen the budget discussions going on from the administration and up on the Hill, everybody sort of universally realizes that we need these technologies developed and implemented. So anyway, if that's a concern of anybody, I think your concern can be alleviated. I see a strong CCS portfolio moving forward in the future. That's it. Thanks, Mike.
You bet, Joe. Great, thank you. And that's actually great to hear, because there is a lot of questions out in the marketplace as to where and how the support will be and show itself. A quick note, Secretary Granholm is talking about a clean energy standard which basically means all the above to get to zero emissions, not a renewable portfolio standard only as the process to get there. So that's an important shift. It's worth noting. How far that goes, time will tell, but it will also support CCS, CCUS in the mix. A quick insight, and going back to Derek, your piece on as you were closing out, there are federal set-asides for minority and tribal opportunities to satisfy government procurement needs. One of them happens to be energy. One of them, Defense Logistics Agency, for example. And Cindy, I don't know how you're situated or how you've explored it, but I would have to think that some kind of a relationship with the tribal communities that you're close to and part of there might be able to satisfy power procurement opportunities with the federal government, with tribal interest being the point of reference, the point of supply, where as a partner or a stakeholder in some entity that's set up to do that. One other area of opportunity. A second piece that I would want to ask, just no answer to today, but maybe food for thought, is that there's a lot of CO2 that's going to be retired and geologically permanently stored. And in some cases, done in under certain criteria, that very well may qualify as carbon credits in a very robust voluntary carbon credit market in the US right now. A number of cargoes of LNG, of crude oil, of coal have been traded out to the market as carbon neutral because the entities on the sell side went out and purchased carbon credits in the open market. And they could be from trees, they could be from soil, they could be from 100 different varieties of carbon reductions that have been created into recognized carbon credits, but they're buying them. And you might be, based on the way you're structured and how you partner up and where your CO2 goes and how it's being handled and which state, could very well be bucketed in addition to the 45Q tax credit valuation. There could be a voluntary carbon credit opportunity as well. Food for thought on that. And Andy, same as we had talked early before we started up, that there might very well be cases where some of the emissions that you will abate by going in and fixing these wells and permanently shutting them down and putting them into a secure fashion, that somebody somehow in the right kind of packaging might very well qualify for carbon credits there as well, whether it's methane or methane and CO2 emissions. Even your H2S has its issues as well as a greenhouse gas effluent. Overall, I'll shift back. Great package of insights here, Cindy and the Enchant gang. My hat's off to y'all for getting this thing pushed down the road. You guys have done a lot of work, and it's showing up. And Randy, I would say that you're going to be in one heck of a catbird seat as all this government effort goes forward. And I think you're right, though, too, about the land rush. You know, the gold rush brought a lot of people out to California. Not all of them were successful mining gold, but they were successful fleecing a lot of other people out of hard work. Steve and Derek, Derek and Steve, great work again on this one. Look forward to the rest of them as at USCA. We're very glad to be here to host with you with the DOE. And I'm going to stop there, other than to say that we're going to have all this is going to be available as a recording on our links on the website. It's not paywalled and it's not password, so you can get to it easily. And so will the presentations that the speakers have given us that they would allow out into the public domain. And thank you guys for the great work. Sheila?
Thank you so much, Michael, and your insights from your experience in the area always add a great deal too. Thank you to all. It's a magnificent project, a magnificent series of issues, and it's so heartwarming, uplifting, and timely for you to set them out for us and to share it beyond our group here today, and have it become kind of a go-to series in which we see the future and how we're going to handle the issues that confront us.
Yes, and thank you. And on behalf of Sagebrush Hill Group LLC, Steve Gray and I, we appreciate your time. We appreciate the Department of Energy and the United States Energy Association for allowing us to have these tribal Indian energy minerals seminars. So thank you, Cindy and Hank and Peter and Randy for great presentations. We will have this available on the USCA website. And so our next and final webinar is in 2 weeks on July 28th. And so we're going to have a wrap up. And so, but for all the listeners, thank you. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, more concerns, but we look forward to the success of the Enchant project. And of course, the orphan and abandoned wells situation. That's certainly something that, we need to pay attention to, especially in the country. So for now, we want to say thank you, and in Navajo, thank you, and so long, everybody, and continue to be safe. So have a great day. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
All right, thank you.